Hi everyone. So today we have our printmaking studio and we are doing Keith Haring's Merman with dolphin, singular. I know I put dolphins on the page in Blackboard, but that is incorrect. There's two that he did. This one is dolphin, singular, and we just have the one dolphin here. There's another one, dolphins, where there's two dolphins and a little less ocean down here. And either one is fine, but this is the one that is in Blackboard, and so go ahead and pull that up and you can follow along. The one in Blackboard is in two colors. And I printed this out just in grayscale because I'm only going to print it in one color. And I thought it'd just be easier for me to follow along with it. The original that Haring did was a painting. It was an original painting. It was 72 inches by 72 inches. It was vinyl ink on a vinyl tarpaulin. And you can see here, we have all of, you can see that it was a tarp that he did it on. You have all of the rivets here that were in the original tarp. And like I said, there's two of them. The other one has the two dolphins, and it's in three colors, I think. But we're just going to do a one color rendition, so we don't have to try and register colors or anything like that. So originally it was a painting. It was 72 by 72, so it's basically square. Later, he did a silkscreen edition, and you can see here that this says 32 of 150, and that means the 30-second impression out of a run of 150, and he did these silk screen. So that's what we are looking at, and we're going to do it today with our Easy Cut or our Speedy Cut, whichever it was that you bought. Since this was square, I'm going to go ahead and scale it down to square. Here's my Speedy Cut block, and my Speedy Cut block is a 4 by 6. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and take this down to a 4 by 4 so that I'll keep the same proportions even though I'm scaling down. I'll be using the same proportions here. So I'm going to mark the 4 inches, and I've got an X-Acto knife, and I'm going to use my X-Acto knife, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'll do a shallow cut first to create a track that my knife can follow. Then I'll go back and do a deeper one. I might have to go over this 3 times to cut all the way through. That's what I was worried about. I don't want it to shift on me. Let's do one more. There we go. And I'm cutting all the way through. Okay, so this is a nice little, I'm going to set that aside. I could do something with that later. Don't forget your Easy Cut has 2 sides, and so you can do your Keith Haring on one side and you can do anything on the other side, your own creation. Or if you start on this today and things happen, as you know, things are wont to happen. So you can always flip it over and start over again and do it on the other side. All right, so I've got this 4 by 4, and you know me, I'm going to go ahead and analyze this for a quick second here. Roughly about halfway, I can tell just by these grommets. I think I said rivets, but they're grommets. So this is about halfway here. I just want to find out where all my image falls and get an idea of where it's going to fall. So interesting here, he has his angel merman. He was famous for his angels. He drew them all over the New York subway system in the 80s. That's where he became famous. And everything is kind of off to the left, and the dolphin is off to the left, and everything is up here. You know, when we talk about balance, this is not balanced. So if we covered up this half, we can see there's a lot going on, whereas on this half, it's a lot simpler, and we especially get out of balance here. We have a little bit of balance from here to here, but look how much of this imagery shows up here. So this ocean over here does create a little bit of negative space, but it does feel a little bit off balance. So that's interesting to me. But that wasn't, Keith Haring was not obsessed with the principles or elements of design. He was very much a street artist and just kind of went with the feeling of it all. So we'll go with it too. So I want to transfer this image over onto my Speedy block. And so I'm going to go ahead and do this. so I kind of get my bearings. See this part, everything that's white here is what I'm going to cut. So here's my merman, comes up here to here. There's a break. All of his head falls on this side. I'm going to put his head right about here. And he comes down and his arms are up like so. And remember, we are doing basically our version of Keith Haring's Merman. And so it will be what we want it to be. I think this arm over here should be a little bit bigger. Right now, since I'm just penciling everything in, I'm not married to anything. This part of his body falls just inside of this line. And then here he crosses over into this quadrant. Down, back up. Very tight in here, and then back around and fuller here. Okay, and then he's winged. So it starts from here and goes almost to the end of this arm. I don't think I'm going to do this border, just FYI. I think I'm going to just stick with the primary image here. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on this. This one comes in just underneath here. 2, 3 comes in just below the elbow. 4. Okay, close enough. And over here, this crosses from right at his neck up into here. This side is actually bigger than the other one, interestingly enough. And 1, 2, 3, and 4. This was probably a little bit bigger. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this side. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I did that wrong. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. I was wondering why that wasn't fitting. Okay, I don't know if this will erase. All right, we're gonna leave it. We'll just remember. Now we got 1, 2, 3 coming out here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Up top here, we have this coming out over here. Okay, let's go put in our little dolphin over here. So about halfway up here is where we have our water line. I think I'll put that in first. And I'm just gonna put in my version of it. And then our dolphin comes up. This little nose. Back in. An eye and another eye. This is too fat. And this should be bigger. I think that should be bigger. There we go. Okay. We've got more waves coming in here. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then he just has all these little like confetti-like things in the water, which I'll go back and just do those, I think, randomly when I get to them. These are all just showing movement. This whole thing is moving. Okay, a lot going on. Okay, I think that's it. So, I think I'll start. I'll put that away for a second. I'm going to start here on my water. I'm going to use my tool. I'm going to gouge this out. So everywhere I gouge, that will stay white. Because that will not receive the ink. I'll make this a little bit deeper. I want this to be a pretty deep, important demarcation line in my print. So I'm going to really fatten this up, make it nice and deep and wide. And I hope you are cutting along with me. I go deep and then I come up shallow to take it off. Turning corners with this is not the easiest thing in the world. So I don't like to turn corners if I can help it. So I'll go deep and then come up shallow and just clip off that end. Just give it a little pull and pop it up. And you can see when I'm, come back. See how broad these lines are? So that's why I'm trying to get a nice deep. The deeper I go, the wider it gets. So I say a deep cut, but mostly I'm looking for it to be wide. And there we go. We're going to go back and get the rest of this water here. I'm going to try turning a corner. It's not quite so tight on these. And then come up, pull it off. Any of you who've ever done a linoleum block are right now really appreciating these easy cut blocks. They're so much easier. Okay, I'm going to do my merman. This is our version, so if you want to take a little artistic license, go right ahead. I'm going to go all in one fell swoop on this, I think, until I get up here to the top. Since that's such a strong right angle turn there, I'm going to just take that separately. We got a lot of beautiful curvilinears on here, which is really nice when you're cutting these blocks. You can follow along on those very easily, and this design is pretty forgiving. I just do want to mention we are doing, you know, a print. We're copying Keith Haring. We're doing it just as a class project, just to explore what it's like to do printmaking. You would never make prints of this and sell them because this is not your work, it is his work. So we were doing this strictly as an academic pursuit. You wouldn't post this on social media or any kind of a web page. This is just for an in-class project. There's a long history of copying masterworks for art students to copy masterwork. So that's what we've been doing in here. I can't get that last, give it a little flick. But like I said, this is his work, not our work. If you didn't think of it, you can't publish it, you can't use it. It's just for your own private edification, for your education purposes, your own private enjoyment. If you like how this turns out and you want to go ahead and frame it and put it up on your wall, that's awesome. You can do that, but that's as far as it goes. I sometimes find myself holding my breath when I'm doing this. I have to remember to breathe. Coming all the way around, turning the block along with my tool. I'm going to come up shallow and bite this one off. There we go. There we go. Okay, I'm going to grab my dolphin hair. This lovely little chap. So adorable. Come come around and grab his nose and go back. Okay. And let's see, I'm going to work on this eye. I'm worried about this eye. I'm going to take a little bit out of the middle. Okay, then I'm going to go around it. It's a very tight curve. Wish me luck. Okay. Not the worst thing. Not too bad. Let's do the wings. So Herring did this as a screen print or a silk screen. Back then it probably was still made out of silk. Really was a silk screen. Nowadays, of course, they'd be made out of polyester. And so that would have been, you know, we talked about it. Silk screens or screen prints are it's a stencil-like application. And so with his, he would have anything that he wanted to print, he would have left uncoated. So you coat up your screen, you place your positive image on the screen, you coat it up with emulsion, you place your positive image on there, and then you expose it to light. And it can be ultraviolet light nowadays, or even just sunlight on some of the newer applications. And where the light hits the emulsion, it hardens it. And with your positive image, it's covering up the emulsion so the light can't hit it. So when you're done with your exposure time, when you remove that, that emulsion has been left soft and you just wash it away. And so where the emulsion is hardened up, no ink will pass through the screen. And where the emulsion is soft, that washes away. And now the ink will pass through the screen. And that's how you create a stencil for your screen print. They have a really great product on the market now, and I don't own stock in it, so I do not benefit from recommending it, but it's so much fun, and it's called Easy Screen, and you can just Google it and look it up if you think you'd like to try screen printing. It's a little pricey, but it's so easy, and you just do it at home, and they give you everything you need. And you, I'm looking to see, these don't quite touch his head. I did touch his head when I drew them, but they don't actually touch his head, so I'm not going to do that. Anyway, back to Easy Screen. And you just take it outside on a sunny day, which is just about every day in Arizona, and expose it. And it's just so cool and so easy. And the how-to video is just of a woman doing it in her kitchen. You don't even have to have a dark room. You can do it. I haven't done this wing yet. Okay, and I messed this one up, so I have to make sure I follow the right lines. Yeah, you don't need a dark room. You just do it in a low light. You turn most of your lights off and just have low light when you're getting everything put together, and then you take it outside into the bright sunlight, and voila, within a few minutes you have a screen. And then they have all sorts of great tutorials on how you can screen on just about everything, and it is so much fun. And they are so good about directing you how to do it, and making it just as simple as possible. So it's a kind of thing that's just accessible to anybody who can follow directions. And it's really a lot of fun if you ever think you might want to try it, and try screen printing. Just about anything, fabric, they have a great tutorial on YouTube of this couple that they use their easy screens and they just screen print everything in their whole house. It's just so much fun to watch them. They did some really cool trays and they screen printed an image in the middle of the tray. I've done a lot of screen printing on clay slabs and then built things out of it. So, and then you just have to make sure that you're using the proper ink. Like when I do screen print on clay, I use underglazes, and I didn't clear these lines out, so I'm going to go back and clear them. So I use ceramic material to screen print with. If you're going to do clothing, you use fabric ink. My older brother was really into screen printing when he was in college, and he was a big Frank Zappa fan. And so, quite illegally now, of course, I realize, but at the time I wasn't really thinking about intellectual property rights. But he took the image off of a Frank Zappa album and made a screen, and they bought the ink and they screen printed up a bunch of t-shirts, and then they sold them at a Frank Zappa concert. Like I said, so illegal. But he had said, hey, you know, I was his little sister. He says, if you want one, I'll do one for you. Just, you know, give me one of your shirts. So I took one of my tank tops to him, and he says, well, I've run out of the fabric ink, but I have regular ink, so I'll just do it in a regular ink, and it should be fine. I said, okay, great. And it wasn't. And so the first time I wore the tank top, the ink leached through the t-shirt, and I had an imprint of Frank Zappa's face on my torso. It took several days for it to finally wash off and wear off. So the moral of that story is A, honor intellectual property rights, and B, use the proper ink. So if you're going to do apparel, use an apparel ink. Okay, while I'm talking, I have continued to work on this. I've got all my lines in. I've got all these little wonderful flecks in that ocean, and I'm just going to go in and kind of add those randomly. I think that's probably the way Herring did them. Just gives everything a lot of motion. It's just, he's activated the whole space. I don't think Keith Haring really was worried about economy. It was more, lots, tons of graphic imagery, a lot of stuff in his prints and drawings and paintings, a lot to digest, always a lot going on. So I'm just going to go in and add a bunch of these wherever I feel like. I just want to make sure I'm activating all of the space pretty evenly. And I don't want it to be too linear because his was really random. And I think I'm going in lines. I'm going to go the other way just to make myself rethink this and not be too linear about it. See, I started to go in lines. I'm just going to keep changing directions. Because when I go in one direction, I notice that as I'm lifting up and away, I'm getting a little tail like a comet. So I'm going to switch up directions, not only to keep me from getting too linear, but also to kind of change which direction that little tail runs off. I think we could use a couple more in here. Okay, that's good. Feeling pretty good about that. Okay, let me gather up all of my debris. Wait for everybody to get caught up. That's currently doing their carving. Okay, so here we are, Keith herring. We're going to, I've got this piece of plastic here. It's got, it had this film front and back, and I removed it on the front. I'm gonna leave it on the back because that'll leave it clean. If anything happens or I get scratches on the front, then I can always switch this over and use it on the back. And I've got these two brayers. I'm gonna try them both today and see what I think. Also, I went ahead and I cut up I'm using my vellum today, and I cut a couple pieces. This is a 4x4, so I cut these as 4.5 by 4.5. I thought that would be really nice. When I go ahead and make my impression, I'll center that up in there. So I just cut 2 of them for now. So I'll have 2 impressions. That'll be my addition. It'll be a 2-piece addition. Okay. All right, brand new tube of ink. I'm just gonna go ahead and dispense a little bit here. It's a nice thick ink. These are old brayers. I haven't used them in a while. One of them is a little bit harder. One is a little bit, very much softer. I think I'm gonna start with the hard brayer and see what I think. So this is what the brayer's for, is just to smooth out. You go back and forth and back and forth. You even out the ink on the brayer. And then you go ahead, transfer that ink over to your plate. So now you can really see my carving. Make sure I get all my edges. Okay, looking good. Watch where I set that down. I'm setting that down back on my piece of plastic over here off camera so I don't end up with ink everywhere. Don't want to touch it if I can help it. I want to get this roughly centered up. I could even use my other brayer, which doesn't have ink on it, or a rolling pin if I wanted to, and press this down. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Now, let's try one other thing. So this, I'm going to try it again without re-inking it because I want you to see what happens with, see how much ink I've lost here? So let's just try this on here without doing another ink. So you can see now in the print world, if they do a pass without re-inking, it's called a ghost impression. And some people really like that. Sometimes your ghost impressions have value to them. Okay, there's my ghost impression. So that's interesting too. I like that as well. All right, so that is, oh, and you know what I forgot to tell you? I just realized this. Everything in print is backwards. So I was looking at Herring's original and I did my dolphin over here, but when I turned it over, of course, it is inverted. And my dolphin, everything that was on the left is now on the right. This is important to understand in any kind of offs. This is called offset printing, where you do it here and then you offset the ink off of a plate. Screen printing, you have a positive and whatever you see here is what's going to go through. But on anything with a plate where you offset it, it's always going to be the mirror image. So that's important to remember if you're going to ever do any kind of text that your text has to be mirror image so that when you bring it over, which means left to right, it's flipped this way. So when you bring it over, it'll read right. But we luckily did not have any text on this. And so there's my original, and there is my ghost print of Keith Haring Merman.